A Roman soldier carved his name into a brothel wall 2,000 years ago, and we know exactly why he did it. Pompeii, 79 AD. The volcanic ash fell fast enough to preserve not just buildings, but the marks people left behind. On the walls of a house near the Forum, someone scratched, "Gaius was here." Simple, defiant, not famous, not meant to last forever, yet it did. And when we read it now, we're reading the voice of a person who thought erasure was the only permanent thing. Most of what we know about Rome comes from marble monuments, official documents, and the writings of the wealthy. Pliny, Tacitus, Cicero. We read them because they wrote things meant to be read by future generations, by power, by history itself. Graffiti was the opposite. It was noise. It was temporary. It was supposed to be painted over, but Pompeii's erasure by ash created a paradox. The temporary became permanent. The unwanted became evidence. Archaeologists have documented over 11,000 pieces of graffiti across the city. Not all of it is profound. Most of it isn't. That's exactly why it matters. In the house of the Vettii, someone wrote, "Secundus loves primigenia." In the amphitheater, Staphylos was here. In a brothel near the harbor, Floronius, a soldier of the Roman 7 Legion, was here. It took him 13 days of service to get here. These aren't the words of senators or philosophers. They're the words of people trying to prove they existed. The Romans had a word for it, inscriptions perietarii, wall writings, and they hated them. Laws were passed to prosecute graffiti artists. Fines were imposed. Owners were held responsible for the marks on their walls, yet the scratching continued. In Pompeii alone, the same names appear in multiple locations. Asellina, Primus, Crescens, people who wanted to be counted. Most graffiti fell into categories. Advertisements. Venerius makes the best bread. Insults. Rufus is a thief. Political endorsements. Vote for Gaius Hulconius Priscus for Edile. Declarations of love and lust, some of it obscene by any standard. Some of it crude, misspelled, the work of people who'd had minimal schooling. But here's what historians missed for centuries. The graffiti wasn't random. It followed patterns. Certain names appeared dozens of times. Certain locations attracted specific types of writing. The amphitheater had mostly names and numbers. Brothels had sexual content. Bakeries had advertisements. People weren't just leaving marks. They were claiming spaces. A woman named Asellina appears 20 times across Pompeii, not in the wealthy districts, in the bars and wine shops near the harbor. Historians initially assumed she was a prostitute. That assumption lasted until someone actually counted her appearances and mapped their locations. What emerged was different. She was a tavern keeper, a business owner, someone who'd written her name on the walls where she worked. That matters, because it means the graffiti was a form of branding, a way of saying, I exist here, I work here, I matter in this space. For people without legal rights to property or formal documentation, scratching your name into a wall was a claim of presence that couldn't be denied. Some graffiti was explicitly political. Gaius Hulconius Priscus for Edile, his friends ask for your vote. But the friends weren't senators. They were ordinary people, neighbors, shopkeepers. They were doing grassroots campaigning, writing endorsements on walls because that's where people actually walked and read, not in forums, on streets. The graffiti also reveals class structures we wouldn't otherwise see. Slaves left marks, soldiers left marks, women left marks, people who left no wills, no property records, no legal trace. The walls of Pompeii are covered with their voices. Crude, temporary, defiant. They knew the marks would be painted over. They did it anyway. One inscription reads, Vibius Restitutus slept here alone and thought of his darling Urbana. Another, Successus, the weaver loves Iris. She doesn't love him back. These aren't historical records. They're not meant to teach us about politics or economics. They're just life, loneliness, longing, the things that don't make it into official histories. Beyond Pompeii, graffiti appears across the Roman Empire. In Britain, in North Africa, in the legionary forts along the Rhine. A soldier in Vindolanda scratched a prayer into stone. Someone in Roman London carved a name into a tile before it was fired. These people had no idea they were creating permanent records. They were just marking their moment. What's remarkable is that historians largely ignored this evidence until the late 20th century. Graffiti was considered low art, vandalism, beneath serious study. But starting in the 1980s, scholars began to realize what they'd been missing. The walls weren't noise. They were a direct line to the minds of people history had rendered invisible. Today, we have digital databases mapping every known piece of Roman graffiti. Scholars cross-reference names across cities. They track migrations. They identify repeat offenders, people who left marks in multiple locations over years. What emerges is a portrait of the empire that official sources never provided. A world of movement, commerce, desire, and claim-staking. The graffiti also reveals humor, insults, wordplay. Epapha is not here. Romula loves Stephanus. Stephanus loves Romula. Successus, the weaver says, whoever doesn't invite me to dinner is a barbarian. These are the jokes of ordinary people, the complaints, the declarations that they were present, they were real, they mattered. When we read Gaius was here on a wall in Pompeii, we're not reading history as it was meant to be recorded. We're reading a moment of defiance, an act of documentation by someone who had no official right to be documented. The walls of Roman cities are covered with these moments, thousands of them. Each one a voice saying, I existed, I was here, I mattered. That's why the graffiti matters. Not because it's sensational or dramatic, but because it's honest. It's the unfiltered record of people making claims on their own existence. For historians studying daily life, motivation, and the actual texture of ancient societies, the walls of Rome speak louder than marble monuments ever could. They are the voice of the voiceless. And they've been waiting 2,000 years for someone to finally listen. Subscribe for more stories from the margins of history, where the real lives of ordinary people are finally being heard.